Alright, now let me show you how to use the Streamweaver Visual Engineer. Now, you've seen various ways to make control files. You can type them in and then send them to Streamweaver. But Visual Engineer makes things a little bit easier. We talked about that in the first video a little bit, but now I'm going to show you an example of really working with a file. So what I want to do generally when I start a Streamweaver session is I want to load in a file stream. So to do that, I do what you might expect. I go to the File menu and go to Open Print Stream. I'll click on that and notice I can open up all kinds of different kinds of print streams, line data, DJDE, AFP, so on and so forth. For this example though, I'll just do a simple line data example. And I'll open up just one we call exercise 1. I'll just open it up. And you'll notice what happens when we open this up. First off, we get a status window up here that gives me the current status of what's going on this read. So first off, you can see the file that it's reading, how many records came in, and what it's doing. In this case, it's saying it's displaying it, so it's done. And we come down here and reported to us what it found out. It found 6 pages in 1 document. Well, we want to change that 1 document because that's not quite right, but we'll show you how to change that here in a second. But it gives you sort of the basic information. So I look at that and I say OK. Now notice what happened. It loaded in my line data file, just like you might expect. And you can see all the information there. There's the date and somebody's name and an ID number. And if I scroll down, I can see several other pages. Notice that the pages are broken into different pages by a pink line. That's something that Streamweaver added in there to just show you where the pages are. And so I just scroll down, you can see there's a bunch of different pages, right? But something else it did, notice it opened up a second file. It opened up a control file. And notice it started filling in some of my control file for me. So you can see it created the input tags. So there's the input and there's the end input tag. And it put some information in there for me. Notice it started the name. There's the file where it came from. There's the type. And so on. So it's kind of nice. It's going to help us create this control file. Now let's say this name tag input 1 is pretty generic. You know, I want to do something a little bit more than that. So I could come over here and just type over input 1 and that would work just fine. But there's an easier way to do this. If I come to any of the tags that I want to look at or modify, I can right click on the tag itself and go to Edit Assistant. When I do, I get a dialog box that pops up, and it's going to be different for each command because there's different things to do in each command. But in this case, see what it gives me. It gives me a description of the tag, so I don't have to memorize anything. I can just come here and look. It gives me what arguments are sent into this tag. Well, there aren't any for this one. And it says there's name and the current is input 1. Well, I can change that, and I'll just say maybe hospital bill, like that. Hit OK, and notice it changed it for me there. So it's real handy. I can do all kinds of things like that. Now, let's say I want to put a new tag in here. Well, the way I do that is I come up to the tag group that I want to put the tag in. I click and I hit enter, so give me a place to put this tag. And the tag I want to put in here is the doc tag. I want to tell Streamweaver how to know when you're at the end of a document. Well, I could, again, just type this in. Start typing it in like this. But once again, there's an easier way to do that. If you come up here to the top menu bar, you will see that there is a little menu icon. It's a less than, greater than sign in red with a green arrow pointing down to it. And it's called the Insert Tag button. So I'm going to click on that. It knows that I'm in the input tag group because that's where my cursor was. And it will list for me all of the tags that are applicable for this group. So again, I can't really make a mistake. I can't type the wrong tag in the wrong group. And I can come down here, and they're all alphabetized and everything. And I can find my document tag group, which is the same as the doc tag group. And you can see what happens. I get a description here. You get the parameters, some other information over here. And when I'm chosen the one I want, I click on OK. And it brings me to the same screen that would happen if I went to right-clicked on it and did the same thing I did with the name tag. Gives me a description, gives me arguments, and gives me some variables that I can fill in. Remember, with the document, we could say various things. We could say the number of pages in the document is 2. And so I can come down here to number of pages in document, type in a 2. Or I can use fields, some fields that I've defined. Well, in this case, I'll just leave it as 1, just for now. But you can see that I can fill in various bits of information that way. And so it puts in the document tag in 1 page per document. Pretty nice. Now, if you remember, we talked a little bit about the ability of Streamweaver to pull data from the document pages and save it into variables. There's an easy way to do that. We have 2 fields up here in our bar, set field reference and set field location. There are 2 ways you can pull values off of a page. If you know for sure before you start that that value is always going to be at the same place on each page, then you can just pull it from a specific location. But if you're not sure where it's going to be, if it's going to move around, then you need to tell it that to get that field in reference to some other information. So for example, let's say the way these documents are, I know my zip code is always going to be right here. So what I can do is I can come over here and I can click and drag until my 5-digit zip code is selected. And I click on the Set Field Location tag. You can see right there, it's the yellow one with the magnifying glass. I click on it, and I'm going to come up here and I'm going to give the value that is going to be taken off the page and put into a variable. I'm going to create the name for that variable, and I'll call it something good and descriptive. I'll call it zip code. Notice there's some other options here I can choose. I won't go into those, but you can do that. And then I click OK. And notice what happened. Now I've got my field in green, color-coded, but I've also got all of the information that I would have needed to type into the control file all done for me. It's a little bit complicated. You could type it if you wanted to, but it's just so much easier to come over here and just select things that you want. Now, one other thing you can do is, let's say this identification number, I need to get this thing right here. But I don't know that it's always going to be on this place on the page. But I do know it's always going to be just to the right of the phrase identification number. So what I'll do is I'll set identification number as a reference field and then pull in the ID number in reference to that field. So this is just a 2-step process. First off, I select the field I want to reference, identification number, and I come up here to the menu bar and I click on the little blue button with the red arrows coming on all directions. That's called Set Field Reference. Click on that and I say, is this a reference for the current field? If not, a new field will be created. And I'm going to say no, it's not a reference for the current field, in other words the one that is green right now. So I want to create a new one, so I click on no. And I'm going to give this again a name for a variable that I want this ID number to eventually be in. So I'll type in ID num, let's say. I don't need to fill in any of the rest of this. And now you can see it's yellow, that's a reference field. The next field I want to define is going to be pulled off in reference to this one. So I'm going to select then the field that I want, go back and click the Set Field Location. It's the same one I did last time, but it's just going to be done for a different reason. And I click on it, and I can see there's my reference field ID num. I could change any of the options here that I want to, but I'm not going to right now. And I click OK, and there you go. Now I'm going to get this field in reference to identification number, and so wherever these two fields appear on the page, I'll find identification number and know that ID number is just to the right of it. And you can see that it did create the fields for me here. It's a little bit different than the first one because it's a reference field. And again, you could type all this in. You could go through and figure it all out from the documentation and type all this in. It's a little bit complicated. It's just easier to do it this way. So that's kind of a general overview of how you would use Visual Engineer.